What's up, Who Dey Nation? Look, I need you to pay close attention to what I'm about to say right now, because this news that's been circulating through NFL backrooms is leaving everyone absolutely stunned. That's right, we're talking about our quarterback, and this conversation is way too serious for us to ignore. So stick with me until the end because you need to know what's happening in the league's corridor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get straight to business. Adam Schefter just validated a conversation that Bengals fans have been refusing to confront. And look, I understand the emotional response here, I really do, but we need to talk about Joe Burrow and the possibility of trade discussions entering the NFL landscape. This isn't about what we want as fans. This is about the business reality of professional football. During a recent Get Up segment on ESPN, Adam Schefter made some comments that sent shockwaves through the football community. He talked about an impending quarterback arms race in the NFL, where teams with significant draft capital are positioning themselves to make blockbuster moves at the position. Here's what Schefter said, and I quote, "This now, as much as ever, feels like an arms race, with teams positioning themselves to make big moves for quarterbacks. Whoever they are, whenever they are. We saw this week that anybody can be had. Now, that's already significant." But then the conversation turned specifically to Joe Burrow, and things got even more interesting. In an exchange with Dan Orlovsky, Schefter posed this question: how do you think Joe Burrow feels about the Bengals defense and the offensive line that's protecting him? Orlovsky response: "If I were Joe Burrow, I would want out of Cincinnati." And here's where it gets critical. Schefter followed up with this: "That's where it gets interesting. Because if that's what he wants, and we have no idea what he wants, but if that's what he wants, it's over. It's over." Let me give you the context that makes this conversation relevant, even if it's uncomfortable. Joe Burrow is working through his third significant injury in 6 NFL seasons. This is a franchise quarterback who plays at an elite level when healthy, there's no question about that. But the durability concerns are real, and they matter. Now, look at the landscape. The New York Jets just went into full asset accumulation mode at the trade deadline. They have the draft capital necessary to make a franchise-altering offer, and they're not alone. Multiple teams are sitting on war chests of picks, looking for their quarterback of the future. Former Bengals receiver Andrew Hawkins made an interesting historical comparison during this same discussion. He pointed out that when Cincinnati traded Carson Palmer years ago, it led to a sustainable era of success for over a decade with Andy Dalton at the helm. Here's what concerns me, and what should concern every Bengals fan paying attention to how this organization operates. This franchise has never been shy about making the fiscally conservative decision. Carson Palmer was the #1 overall pick just like Burrow. He eventually forced his way out. The Bengals obliged and pivoted to a more cost-effective approach with Dalton, a second-round pick who provided solid, if unspectacular, quarterback play. Could history repeat itself? It's not about what Joe wants by all accounts. He loves Ohio and wants to win in Cincinnati. This is about organizational philosophy. If the front office believes they can stockpile young, cheap talent through a massive trade haul and transition to a more pedestrian game manager type at quarterback, would they pull the trigger? Let's talk about what this would mean strategically. A trade of this magnitude would likely net Cincinnati multiple first-round picks, plus additional premium selection. That's the kind of capital that can rebuild a defense, fortify an offensive line, and set up the franchise for sustained competitiveness. But here's the counter-argument. Elite quarterbacks don't grow on trees. You don't just stumble into a Joe Burrow. When you have a talent like that, you build around him. You don't trade him away and hope you can find lightning in a bottle again. The problem is, building around Burrow requires significant investment, particularly on the offensive line and defensively. This organization has historically been reluctant to spend big in free agency or make aggressive moves to protect their most valuable asset. I know what you're thinking right now. "John, this is insane. We're not trading Joe Burrow." And emotionally, I'm right there with you. The thought of losing the best quarterback this franchise has had since its inception is painful to even consider. But we have to separate emotion from business reality. The NFL is ruthless. If Schefter is bringing this up, if Orlovsky is saying Burrow might want out, if there's smoke around this conversation, we need to pay attention. What matters most is what Joe wants. If he's happy in Cincinnati and committed to this organization long-term, this conversation ends. But if there's any hesitation, if he's frustrated with the lack of support around him, if he questions whether this franchise is truly committed to winning championships, that's when things could get complicated. Here's my take on what the most important factor is in all of this: organizational commitment. The Bengals are at a crossroads. They can either go all in on building a championship-caliber roster around Joe Burrow, spending the money and making the moves necessary to compete at the highest level, Or they can continue their historically conservative approach and risk losing the confidence of their franchise player. The upcoming offseason will tell us everything we need to know. If Cincinnati invests heavily in offensive line help, if they address the defensive deficiencies, if they show Burrow they're serious about winning, this conversation died. But if we see more of the same penny-pinching approach, if meaningful roster upgrades don't materialize, then Schefter comments become prophetic. This isn't a prediction. This isn't me saying a trade will happen. This is me telling you that the conversation is out there. It's being had by serious NFL insiders, and we'd be naive to ignore it completely. Who Dey Nation, I want to hear from you. Do you think there's any legitimacy to these Joe Burrow trade discussions? Are you worried about the organization's commitment to building around him? Or do you think this is all overblown speculation that won't amount to anything? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want to stay ahead of every major development with your Cincinnati Bengals, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. This is John with Bengals Today. Thanks for watching, and as always, Who Dey?